One day, while I was employed at a large bank, I received an order from the executives to move and improve the performance of a regional branch. However, my wife, Emily, acted reluctantly. When I brought this up, she scowled and asked, "Isn't this a demotion?" She started to claim she had no interest in me with a lower wage since she mistook it for a demotion. Brusquely, "Let's get a divorce," she remarked. I divorced Emily because she was a broken, exhausted, and worn-out man. Emily visited her, a fair companion, George, behind my back. I was motivated to work hard at the branch by my irritation and despair. My efforts paid off 6 months later, and I was promoted to CEO. My ex-wife did something unexpected when this news leaked, but it was too late. My ex-wife and her lover, George, were in for divine vengeance. What was the divine penalty they had to endure? Erwin John is my name. I am a 45-year-old division head at a large bank who is renowned for being sincere and hardworking. Since my early days as an employee, I have been committed to the organization. My diligence has paid off, and I have gained the confidence of the CEO and other executives. I'm lucky to have their favor. As a result, a lot of people think I'll be the future CEO. I've had a successful business career in spite of my hectic schedule. Living with my wife, Emily, has been a good part of my life at home. Emily, a stay-at-home wife, has taken over the domestic chores because I don't have much time for her due to my hectic schedule. I came home solely to sleep. Fortunately, though, Emily never voiced any complaints. "How's your wife?" is a common question among my subordinates, who frequently lament the ongoing disputes they have with their wives. I'd respond, "We get along without fighting," and they'd give me a jealous, incredulous expression. They would commend Emily and myself, saying, "It's wonderful to have no complaints." Emily was the ideal spouse. She does have one weakness, though, and that would be her lavish spending. She had a propensity for shopping for clothing, accessories, and shoes, and once a month she would purchase something designer. She enjoyed shopping online as much as in physical stores. She would even purchase new appliances while the old ones were still functional with a single button press. She appeared to use spending money as a stress reliever. We didn't have kids, so we only spent money on ourselves, which was understandable, considering how little I paid attention to Emily and how I let her do all the housework. I was too ashamed to be harshly critical of her spending patterns. I ignored her financial irresponsibility every time because it never resulted in debt or financial collapse. A workplace celebration party was announced one day, and Emily and I made the decision to go. I informed my subordinates that I would be going, and then I heard a snarky comment coming from behind me. "Oh, bringing your wife to butter up the boss." I turned to see my coworker George O'Connor grinning savagely. "Not this again." I sighed and whispered to myself. George has always harbored resentment for me, for whatever reason. George has always been a poisonous individual who has hampered me, caused me problems, and attempted to steal my accomplishments or disseminate false information. George was a constant source of trouble for me, even if my personal and professional lives were comparatively steady and I was fortunate to have kind coworkers and subordinates. Fortunately, his ideas never challenged my position because of my successes and the trust one had built up. On the day of the celebration party, Emily and I went to the venue. I left my seat to greet others, and it was a busy round of greetings. Emily and I separated. "Take your time," Emily kindly sent me off, but I felt a bit guilty about it, even though it couldn't be helped. After finishing my round of greetings, I hurried back to Emily. Then I witnessed a shocking scene. I saw Emily and George chatting intimately. I had never heard of Emily and George being close, but there they were, looking unusually friendly, with George's hand on Emily's waist. What was going on? I doubted my own eyes. Then they started to head outside the venue, George's arm still around Emily's waist, escorting her away. Suspicious, I followed them. Why did I have to do this? Despite my thoughts, I stealthily trailed them. The two went outside the venue, stopped at a secluded passage, and then looked into each other's eyes. The intensity of their gaze was something else. They seemed like lovers. But Emily is my wife, and if they were lovers, it would mean an affair. No way. I prayed it was all a misunderstanding. Then next Saturday, at our usual hotel. "Okay," Emily said in a sweet voice. I was surprised. I hadn't heard her speak like that in a long time. But what did she mean by our usual hotel? Oh, is your husband okay with next Saturday? He's been working even on Saturdays lately. Such a bore, she added. I was stunned by their words. So they were indeed involved. Moreover, Emily called me a bore? Really? Saying that? Oh, true. A man whose home is no fun at all. George laughed. Hardly. Well, Emily looked very dissatisfied. Then why marry him? I didn't think he was such a bore back then. Her words hit me like a punch to the back of my head. So, that's what she thought of me. I felt sad, but it didn't end. There. He's just an ADM now. Now an ADM, hope? Yes, only good for his money. Anyway, let's not waste time on such boring talk. I want to be alone with you real soon. I couldn't bear to listen any longer. Staggering, I returned to the venue. I couldn't believe it. I was completely shocked. I sent a message to Emily on my smartphone telling her I was heading home first, and then I left the venue. A few hours later, it seemed she had come home too, but I stayed in my room and didn't see her. The shock was too much, and I didn't have the energy to confront her about the affair. I was just stunned. The next day, still reeling from the shock, I went to work. Then, I was called in by the executives and ordered to transfer to a regional branch. Surprised by the sudden news, the executives explained they wanted me to help turn around the struggling branch. Faced with the company's crisis, I accepted the transfer. After returning to my desk, George, who had quickly heard about my transfer, started mocking me right in front of me. A transfer to the sticks? That's pretty much a demotion. I ignored him, but the situation with Emily left me feeling uneasy. That night, I told Emily about the transfer to the regional office. She made a clearly displeased face. Isn't that a demotion? Emily responded coldly. No way, she declared. I stayed with you because you were bringing in the money, but if a demotion means less pay, then there's no point in staying together. She said that coldly. I don't want to go to the sticks either. Emily laughed. I was so taken aback by her words that I said, that's no way to talk, trying to get her to listen. But Emily wouldn't hear any of it. Go by yourself. I'm divorcing a broken ADM, she said. Her words and attitude left me in despair. We hadn't been together for a short time. What was all that time for? It just made me sadder. I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. Feeling strongly, I didn't even bother to confront her about the affair with George and filed for divorce before the transfer. I just wanted to escape the mental pain as quickly as possible. It was a result of running away from facing everything. But at that time, that was the only way I could keep my sanity. Heartbroken, I transferred and started working at the regional branch. On my first day, I noticed the tense atmosphere in the branch. When I found out, it was a tug of war between two factions, eager to reform. Apparently, the branch lacked a unifying leader, and that was the root cause. The two factions were so focused on undermining each other that they couldn't concentrate on their work, worsening the performance. I took a neutral stance and started asking each faction about their grievances. As I listened carefully, their superficial complaints turned into deeper conversations. One faction was unhappy with a profit-first policy, while the other was dissatisfied with constantly having to handle troublesome cases. I see, I nodded. I thoroughly reviewed and streamlined the workflow to ensure both sides could engage in their work satisfactorily. As a result, the factional disputes disappeared like a lie, and performance improved. The branch even started to grow. A year later, I returned to the headquarters, having completed my mission. Everyone praised my achievements in reviving the branch's performance, welcoming me back warmly with kind words and appreciation. However, George alone sneered. Finally back from your exile? Huh, John? You made it back. Thought you'd be stuck in the boon is forever. George smirked and laughed sarcastically while using rude language. I understood he disliked me, but such aggressiveness seemed immature. Coming back here, you think there's anything good for you? It's not like that. Why say such awful things? His rudeness was too much, so I retorted a bit. You know, man, George laughed. Should I say it then? He pretended to hesitate. Go ahead, say it, I told him. If you say I can, then I will, he shrugged dramatically. Demoted because you're no good at your job, and your wife left you because you're no good as a man. Even back here, you've got no place. How could he say something so heartless? His claim about my work was just his misconception. And as for Emily, Maybe I was a lousy husband to her, but I didn't want to hear that from George, who had stolen her away, committing adultery, and then speaking like he was justified. It was outrageous. George, oblivious to my feelings, kept on talking. Your beautiful ex-wife is my woman now, he scoffed at me. My already subsided anger reignited at his brazen admission of the affair. George seemed to have no understanding of the gravity of his actions. While being assigned to the regional branch to deal with its issues, I had learned all too well the negative impact of having such destructive individuals around. They were not just a nuisance in the workplace, but a toxic presence, affecting the entire organization, as recent investigations had shown. Thinking about it, George was a dangerous person. I realized that I had to ask George to leave the company to prevent any future harm. That meant I needed to uncover all of George's past misdeeds, doing that would reopen my wounds. But for the sake of the company, I had to face it. Now was the time to confront the escape I made when I didn't want to be hurt. With that resolve, I firmly investigated everything around George. It was tough, and it pained my heart, but I succeeded in uncovering the details of George's life. The investigation revealed that George had been involved with Emily 2 years before our divorce was finalized. It seemed he had initiated contact with Emily at a celebration party 2 years ago. He had been heard saying, "John's wife is such a beauty," apparently having his sights on her for a while. Someone mentioned that George was annoyed, saying, "It irks me that John married such a beauty, and he seemed desperate to ruin my happiness." While dating Emily, he apparently spent a considerable amount of money, flaunting his wealth. I was shocked at the amounts and assets he had. Where did all that money come from? But then, an even more serious issue came to light. Starting with Emily, it was uncovered that George had been deceiving an elderly, wealthy individual, withdrawing money from their account without permission and using it for himself. This is a crime, isn't it? Judging him to be a harmful influence on our company, I immediately reported the embezzlement to the executives. They were shocked and furious. Summoning George, he desperately denied it, claiming, "He's trying to frame me. It's all his delusional talk." He pointed at me, yelling fiercely. However, when confronted with the evidence I had gathered, George had no choice but to admit his guilt. "Oh my gosh," one of the executives exclaimed. "After looking into it, were you the one trying to set John up? What do you have to say for yourself?" Faced and glared at by the executives, George crumbled to his knees, sobbing. Afterwards, of course, he was fired. Moreover, he was required to repay the misused funds, incurring a debt of tens of millions of dollars. It was his own doing, but such a dramatic downfall. Meanwhile, I was appointed the new CEO for my achievements in the region. When news broke of my appointment as CEO, my ex-wife's family, who I hadn't heard from since our divorce, contacted me. "I want to give it another shot. I want to start over." I thought it was a demotion back then and just panicked. It wasn't my true feeling. "Let's give it another try. We can go back to how we were." I naturally refused. Maybe George initiated contact, but Emily went along with it. I still haven't forgotten how she called me a broken man. Emily claimed it wasn't her true feeling, but as soon as George fell and I became CEO, she showed her true colors. She loved money, not the person. Think it over. I sued my ex-wife Emily for alimony due to the affair, and of course, George too, given the hurt they caused. It was only fair. 6 months later, as the new CEO, I was living busy and fulfilling days. Emily and George kept contacting me, saying, "Life is hard. Please reduce the alimony." George, it seems, is working day and night to repay his debts in tough and demanding jobs, leaving him physically and mentally exhausted. As for Emily, having been a homemaker for so long, she kept making mistakes at work and was frequently fired. I don't think mistakes were the only reason, but she wouldn't listen, instead blaming me. "It's your fault for keeping me as a homemaker." In the end, she's the one who came saying that. Apparently, she became hysterical due to lack of money, and I heard she and George broke up quickly after constant quarreling. They were blaming each other, and it seems like it caused a rift in their relationship. I refused to reduce the alimony they were begging for, telling them to take responsibility for their actions. I urged them to face their sins. Humans tend to avert their eyes from things they don't want to see. By facing the reality I had avoided, I was able to grow. I believe that's why I am in my current position. No matter what difficulties I face in the future, even if I want to look away, I vow not to repeat the mistakes of the past.